Power Project family, today we have an amazing episode on real estate investing with David Greene. He's a TEDx speaker featured on CNN, Forbes, HGTV, and he's the co-host of the top real estate podcast, Bigger Pockets. He's the author of many best-selling books and is passionate about helping normal individuals like ourselves build wealth through real estate. He runs a top-producing real estate company in Keller Williams that has sold over $200 million in real estate in 2021. An active real estate investor, David owns single-family properties across the country and shares in apartment complexes. After this episode, you're going to have the necessary tools to get yourself started in real estate. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode with David Greene. It smells like mint chocolate. Right here, try half to just pour some of that in there. And I'll pour the rest in mine.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm supposed to like lick this off your body or something?
It was supposed to be me licking it off your nipples, primarily.
You have a specific spot you're going to put it on.
Yeah,
okay.
It's not good if it's just
odd.
It depends who drinks the mind bullet first.
I wonder how long he's been thinking about my nipples to say that. Huh?
Man, they're very perky, yours.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do they still have a YouTube account?
Yeah, they did have it. Wasn't it an Instagram? I thought it was an Instagram.
I think it was. Really? Oh, my bad. I thought it was YouTube. I thought it was somebody that would comment.
My mustache has an account.
That's
Mark
Is he still around?
What's that?
What's up?
Has the podcast started?
Yeah.
Oh, we're going.
Opening with nipples.
I mean,
It's
usually
one of the
how
better things that we've opened with, to be perfectly honest. It could be much
more
worse.
The show usually starts downhill and just kind of continues onward.
We like to start on a low point so that it goes up and people are like, oh, it's getting better.
That the key to successful life is lowered expectations.
Exactly.
You price anchor, right? Set it very low.
What got you into jiu-jitsu and like how did you take the first step to get in there? Because there's a lot of people that listen to this show. They're thinking about something to do, whether it's like go for a walk or run or start lifting. How did you start?
So I was a defensive tactics instructor when I was a police officer. I already kind of had a background in combat. And then I haven't been working in law enforcement for 4 or 5 years, so I kind of missed that aspect. And then we interviewed Jacko Willink on our podcast.
Wow.
And my co-host...
Never heard of him.
Yeah. My co-host, Brandon Turner, kind of got roped into committing to do jiu-jitsu, and you don't commit to something with Jacko and then not do it. So he basically... Like, Jacko has that authority that just his mere presence can get you to step your game up, just being around him. So Brandon signed up for jiu-jitsu, and then I was watching him and get better, and I thought, I can't let that happen without me jumping into. So I reached out to a buddy of mine, Justin Hoagland, and he went to a Crossley Gracie Jiu-Jitsu in Brentwood, and I basically started going and like watching them, and then I started taking privates with him, and then I signed up for the class.
Was it intimidating interviewing Jacko Willink?
I don't know. Intimidating.
It seems like a really nice guy, but he also seems fucking intimidating.
Yeah, how would I just... It's different than any human being I've ever met. It's that feeling when you're at the zoo and you're looking at a lion. All right, I'm not trying to shine somebody else's wheels this much, but you're very aware that is a lion and I am not. Right, and there's something that just draws you to it, like the nature, the essence, the aura of that thing. When you meet Jacko, he is so comfortable in his own skin that you immediately recognize areas that you're not comfortable in yours. So there's this normal thing that an average human has where you want to be liked and you want to like someone else. And so when you first meet someone, we're dudes. So there's this little like, I'm not a threat thing we have to get through, right? Because you've got the whole, who's the alpha going to be that has to get figured out. And then there's the, well, I'll compliment you and then you compliment me and all the dust kind of settles and we figure out what kind of, right? You guys know what I'm talking about. Jacko just does not play.
Complicated for some reason.
It all happens subconsciously, but that's kind of how every interaction with the guy is, right?
Okay.
It's not like that with Jacko. He just doesn't care if you like him or if you don't like him. He's so secure in what he believes and his values that you will find yourself wanting him to laugh at something you said or wanting to get some kind of feedback and he just doesn't give it. But it's not a jerk thing. It's one of those like where being around him kind of made me recognize areas where I was insecure, areas where I was maybe cheating, just instead of just being who I am, where I'm trying to get you to like me with some kind of a gimmick. And I love that. It actually made me leave thinking, I wish I could have that impact on other people, right? Like if you improve your own game, you take away some of the weaknesses you have, it causes everyone around you to want to lift up theirs. And that would be like that intimidating in a sense because it forces you to see the weaknesses in yourself.
How do you think someone gets there to that point?
I think Jacko has just done hard thing after hard thing without compromising and doing the right thing for so long that he's learned. Like I think a lot of us in life, we sort of just cheat our way through certain things. You can earn people's respect by working hard, getting good, putting in the work, Or you can develop a charismatic personality that kind of causes a little bit of, gives you an edge in certain cases.
Fake it, cheat it a bit, yeah.
Yeah, but so we're all doing that so often that you don't always recognize that's what's going on, but that's what your motive is. And so I think just having to be a Navy SEAL, being in combat, having to lead great men like he had to do, that stuff doesn't work around people like that. So he's just been gone through this refining process that's created the guy he is now.
Well, with doing jiu-jitsu for a while now, how's it been for you? How have you been, because you said you did defensive tactics as an officer.
Yeah.
Has that helped you with jiu-jitsu, or is it different?
I think it's helped in the sense that when we learn a technique, I can pick it up faster than the average person would.
Okay.
Right? Understanding body mechanics, what I'm trying to torque, where I'm trying to limit them. But as you know, as someone who does it, when you're actually rolling, the knowledge element, like mental intelligence, doesn't translate into kinetic knowledge, like when you're actually having to do the movement, right? So in one essence, I'll feel like, yeah, I'm picking this up quicker than other people. But then when we roll, complete level playing field. There's people that couldn't explain how they did it, but they just naturally will do the right things. So I think there's that dichotomy of it that I really love, where you're going to love it and hate it at the same time. You're going to feel really good when you're drilling, then you're going to get your butt kicked when you roll, then you're going to have a great roll, and there's this like bipolar experience of going to class over and over and over.
How does it feel being, because you are a big, strong guy, but because I got my ass beat by guys that were 100 pounds less than me. And that was different because I wouldn't have expected that. How does it feel having that happen to you?
I expected that when I went there.
Yeah.
So I was lucky in the sense that I did not have an ego, right? I was looking at it like, you've done doing this for 2 years. I've been doing this for 2 months. If you couldn't tap me in 5 minutes, even if you're 100 pounds less than me, I still think I win. But what I would say is I've never been as jealous of a smaller human being as when I was literally looking at like 150 pound guys like, you're so lucky. I wish I was 5'5" like you and I could just do this for 25. I've never had those thoughts until you get to jiu-jitsu and you're like, his body is a little more coordinated. It can pick this stuff up. They could just go forever. A lot of the submissions are torque based or position based, right? So being strong doesn't help. There are areas where it will help, but I did think that was funny that I caught myself jealous of smaller men, which I would have never had that experience in my life before.
Yeah, and then you start getting jealous of like how someone moves. You're like, oh shit. And me being like a longtime power lifter, it was never really about how someone moved. It was how much weight they moved. Like that was kind of more how we were judged. But more recently, I'm like, shit, man, that guy's in his 50s. He moves great. Or that guy is able to move out of that hold really well. Or that guy's able to, do his squats or his lunges with really good form and technique. So as you get older, you start to kind of keep an eye on some other things and you start to admire some different things. And you want to shift and start to go in some different directions.
That is a great point. I think like seeing some of the somersaulting stuff that the littler guys can do. My first 3 months, every private lesson I took, we didn't even roll. It was literally just the movements, practicing like standing up and getting down and moving around on the ground and rolling and somersaulting and those things that kind of the building blocks that you need to get before you can ramp up. So I think that's why this is fun right now, because I don't have to do anything. If I just show up, I get better. When you're a white belt, it's not hard to get better. I think when you get to the upper levels, you're a brown belt, you're a purple belt, you kind of got to seek out an experience where someone can teach you something. But right now, I can't help but get better every time. Just showing up is the best thing I can do. I think for a lot of people that hear about it, like you said, they want to get into it. Your best bet, if you know you're not the type who's just going to show up and sign up, go sit there and watch the class. And if you just hate it, if it's a culture you don't like some of them, it's like a lion's den. They're just going to throw you in there, right? The one I go to isn't that way. Like, you don't even roll till you get your first stripe. You're just going to drill. They're going to build up your body. They're going to get you used to the fundamentals type of thing. But maybe you want the lion's den experience. I would say just show up at the gym and watch. And then you'll get kind of comfortable with the culture and the feel, and then you can figure out where you're going to sign up.
You down to try some Mind Bullet?
It comes with this tab.
Sealed tab.
Yeah, exactly. So that makes me think this is pretty serious.
We get a little cheers going here.
Well, that also means that none of us opened it and spiked it with anything.
Good point.
That's true.
You're safe.
Down the old hatch.
I'd say start with half. Oh, you drank the whole thing.
Andrew's like, Andrew's watching. He's like, I'm the only one who's going to remember anything.
Yeah, I mean, I took the capsules, but
Was that on purpose? Did you tell me to take half after you watched me take the shot of the bottle?
It kind of looked like it.
It's like, oh fuck.
Very nicely done.
I'm like, carry him out of here.
Yep. He's like, I see his esophagus moving. Now's the time to tell him.
That's
You almost broke the light.
Andrew, did you hit
happening.
the record button?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
But after our conversation, I checked at least like 100 times already because I'm like, I better not fuck this one up.
Yeah, you were saying you had Jim Quick on your show?
Yeah. He's the memory guy, right? He teaches people how to remember stuff better. And my co-host, Brandon Turner, forgot to hit record. And we had been talking to Jim, and Brandon's like, yeah, one time we forgot to record, so we came up with a system so we never do it again. And he was almost using it as a way to bond with Jim. Like I was saying earlier, we do this thing where we want people to like us. So he's kind of shining Jim's wheels, like, we took your stuff and we incorporated it into, and then we forgot to hit record. So then we had to tell him 45 minutes into the show, we got to start over because we didn't hit the record button.
And he was willing to start over and just do everything again.
Did he just die laughing or what?
No, he did not think it was very funny. He was one of those, like, he was trying to be classy and hold in what he was really thinking, but you could kind of see it, like, classy guy.
That would be frustrating, especially if you felt like you said some gold nuggets in there. You got to kind of start over. You'd be like, fuck.
Yeah, you never get it right the second time. You tell a great story, someone doesn't hear it, you never tell that story again the same way. They get a Cliff Notes version.
It's it's edited, and all the cuss words are taken out of it. All the fun stuff, all the juicy stuff is taken out of it at that point. How'd you transition from being a police officer for how many years?
10.
Shit, how'd you transition from being a police officer for 10 years to doing more real estate?
It was not a good transition or an easy one. Very difficult. Like what I tell people is it was like going from like powerlifting to yoga. Just the skill set did not translate well when I got into real estate sales and then a mortgage company that I have now. Just sales in general is a completely different skill set than when you're a police officer. So from that perspective, it was tough. But what was good is that it really forced my personality to become more well-rounded. So when you're in law enforcement, it's a very logical decision-making process. Like, okay, did you do something that was wrong? Yes or no? Yes. All right. Do I have the authority to stop you? Yes or no? Is it worth stopping you? Yes or no? That's how everything goes. And then you get to the end where it's like, hey, I'm going to write you a ticket, or I need to arrest you or whatever. Are you going to let me do it, or am I going to have to force this upon you? It's still just very binary. Then you get into sales, and that does not work on other human beings who have fears and emotions and hesitancy and excitement. Like most of what you do when you're in real estate sales is you take a person who already wants something and want to buy a house, they want to sell their house, and you're trying to smooth out their emotional spikes all the time. So I started off and I just approached it the same way I did law enforcement. Like, your house is worth this. Do you want to sell it? Yes or no? That was kind of, and then I just realized I can't be good at this. I had to develop completely new skills. So from that perspective, it's been great. I learned to value relationships a lot more than I did before. I wasn't like a non-relationship
What do you mean by that?
guy. So when I was a police officer, if you were not a very good police officer, I probably wasn't the nicest, kindest person towards you. Like, if you're not good at your job, I just don't really respect you. I'm not going to yell at you, but I just ignore you.
And it would probably have been helpful for you to assist those people, or figure out a way to be more open to those people, so you had a better team.
The people that were open to being assisted, I would have.
Right.
If you were like, I'm not good at this and I'm just okay not being good at it, I just sort of like dismissed you, just wasn't acknowledging your existence. But then those people started buying houses with other people, and they would say, well, I never thought you liked me, so I didn't want to. And I was like, that's a good point. I kind of didn't like you, and I wouldn't have done something different in your position. So I started to recognize that my value system of like, are you good at what you do? And that determines your value as a human being, had leaked into my business and was now causing problems. So it forced me to recognize that, hey, I may not respect you in the profession you are, but you may be a great father. You may be a great person in other areas.
Maybe
of
the
life.
guy sucks as a cop, but it doesn't mean he sucks as a dad. Doesn't mean he sucks as being a buddy or a friend or whatever. Yeah.
And if I learned to value those aspects of a person and I value the relationship better, I would treat them with more respect. Boom, business got better. So I started doing that with everything, everywhere I went. If you didn't fit in the box of things I understood and valued, I would have just not paid attention to you. But now I realize I need this relationship for you to send me referrals, for you to support my business. So it was my responsibility to figure out for everyone I came across, how do I bring value to your life? How do I make you a better version of you? How do I figure out what your goals are and help you with them, even if they're not things that I would necessarily want for myself?
Quick question. Before we get deeper, because some people are probably listening like, oh, he's just a real estate agent. Can you kind of, like, I'm curious because I want to know like how long you were a cop, how old you were when you made the transition, but can you talk to people about just like some of the stuff you've done in real estate, because you're really fucking good at what you do.
Thank you for that. So I was a cop, and I basically just started working overtime. And in 2009, I had saved a lot of money when I was in college. I was a waiter. So I graduated college with about $100,000 in the bank.
Wow.
I worked every day that I could. It was pretty much either just like, exercise, go to school, or go to work. And I was good at saving. So I bought a house in 2009. Then I bought another one in 2010. Kind of bought a house a year till 2013. So I had about 5 or 6 houses, and then the market took off. So I had to start buying in other states because California was too expensive. You couldn't do it here. Started buying in Arizona, put together this system of how I buy rental properties out of state. I didn't know that was a risky thing, a dangerous thing. I just thought, well, if I want to do this, this is what I got to do. Wrote a book called Long Distance Real Estate Investing that was published by a company called Bigger Pockets, which is kind of the premier real estate investing website. It's all free information, teaches people how to do this. They're like an anti-guru site. You don't have to pay $100,000 to learn how to flip a house. So that book went really well. Wrote a second book called Buy, Rehab, Rent, Refinance, Repeat, which is basically a real estate investing strategy where you buy a property, you add value to it through fixing it up. It's now worth more. You then refinance it and get more of your capital out of it so you can go invest in the next house, as opposed to just buying a bunch of houses, dumping money into fixing them up, and you don't have any money in the bank. So it's harder to survive downturns. That book went well too. Eventually got offered a position on the podcast with Brandon Turner, and we started co-hosting the podcast. Now, Brandon's my best friend, so we had a really good chemistry. The podcast grew really quickly. I learned talking, like a skill that I didn't really have to have before. Like I'm sure you guys, so there's a skill to telling a good story, keeping people engaged. And then I started buying a lot of rental properties. So I got to where I was buying like 2 to 3 a month. And those were all out of state. Eventually got my real estate license, started selling houses as a realtor.
So you didn't have your real estate, you didn't need a real estate license to do all of this?
Not at all. Because I was buying them just for myself to keep it. I got tired of referring people to real estate agents, and then my buddies would come back to me and say, this guy doesn't know this, or they're not doing this. And now I got to fix the problem right? So I'm just going to get my license and do it myself. Built a real estate team, have about 20, 25 agents now, and we have like a system worked out where I'm not actually the agent anymore. I'm the CEO of that company. Started a mortgage company this year. And then I still flip houses. I invest in apartment buildings with other people. I'm kind of now moving into the space where I help raise money and I give it to people that know how to invest it at a really high level. And I help make money for the investors.
Wow.
Being a police officer previously and just having to deal with a lot of different people, that must be helpful in your transition to what you're doing now, or even what you were doing maybe just a couple of years ago in building this team and being able to kind of understand what you mentioned earlier, like the fact that someone's not a great police officer doesn't mean they're different. People want to be a realtor probably for some different reasons. Maybe like I've noticed this in sports, especially like on the high school level, like the lower level of sports. There were some kids that just wanted to participate and just wanted to be part of a team, but they weren't really a football player. And there's some differences, right? So there might be some people that just are looking for a job that can be flexible with the hours. They get to interact with people, and they kind of like crunching some numbers. So maybe that particular, but they're not like crazy passionate about it. So that must have been helpful in your transition in some ways.
The sports background was by far the best thing that could have happened for building that team. So I was a big basketball player when I was younger. It was my passion. I loved basketball. I thought I was going to be a coach. That's where I thought my career was going to go. And I would say that simultaneously the hardest and most rewarding part of building that team is the approach that a coach has to take, where you do need everybody on that team to be committed to winning if you want a good team. We can't really have people on at least our real estate team that are, hey, I just kind of want to work part-time. They can work in the brokerage, but they're not actually going to be on the David Greene team. But you do find that you can't have a team full of three-point shooters. You can't have a whole bunch of centers that can all play really good defense and block shots, but nobody can handle the ball. There's a lot of that goes into building the team of this agent is good with these type of clients, but they are terrible with staying organized. So I will have to pair them with an admin that is great at being organized, but does not like sales and does not want to put themselves out there to talk to people. So that tinkering with the chemistry of the different team members to try to get it right is most of what my job is on that team. And what it looks like is you feel like you're sucking, and you get the right combination. You pair John Stockton and Karl Malone, and then boom. They go to 15 houses in escrow over a 3-month period. It's insane how that goes. So I think anyone who's starting a business, that's sort of an underrated part that they have to understand is, what is the goal? We're trying to do this. And we have these people that want to work on the team, but what are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? And how much are they willing to actually work on those? Like we were talking about earlier, not every human being is willing to work on weaknesses or improve, right? Some people just want to hit cruise control and they want to be comfortable. Others are an empire builder that want to go and take over the world, and they need someone to guide them in that direction. So I think that's why a lot of businesses don't work out.
Imagine if some of your realtors showed up in short shorts like John Stockton used to rock back in the day.
He wore them all the way through his career.
Yeah.
Even when everyone else was wearing big shorts.
Yeah, when everyone switched, he just kept it real.
Yeah.
Did you have an intention of going into real estate when you were a cop, and like after you got out of college, was like the whole thing to be a cop for a while and then can go into real estate, or
totally bass backwards? I had no intention of becoming, and that's funny because we give people advice on our podcast is you need a plan, you need a vision, you decide where you want to go. It's just not the way that it worked out. I didn't even intend to buy that first house. I had a friend who was going to Bible college, and he had this house in escrow, and he was going to lose his earnest money. And he was telling me the story, and I was like, well, maybe I could buy it and you could keep your earnest money. And I was kind of like interested, and I'd been following home prices. So I went and looked at the house, and it was listed. He had it under contract for $215,000. It had sold for $565,000 a couple years ago. So like it was the perfect timing after the crash. I was able to get under contract at $195,000. And the next thing I know, I'm a real estate investor and had to figure out like, how do you rent out a house? How do you find a tenant? What's the form I need? It was like you said, like you just get in it and you start to figure it out. But then what happened is my identity shifted. I started to see myself as a real estate investor. So the next year, my mom said, hey, there's a house down the street for sale. And my mind went to, ooh, I should go look at that, as opposed to, cool, there's houses for sale everywhere, Mom. Right? What's the point? So then when I bought that house, now this is like a thing. Like I buy houses and I own them. So my grandmother died the next year. And instead of just having the family sell the house, I bought the house and paid the family. And then next year I bought another like fourplex. And that's when I realized, oh, like these apartment type homes actually generate even more cash flow. So it's one of those things where just getting in there, like just showing up at the place, you start to get exposed to it. You meet other people that do it. Your identity starts to shift, and then boom, I had the vision that I needed to run it.
What do you think gave you the confidence to? Because like sometimes that's hard for somebody to. It sounded like it happened pretty early in your career to just say like, yeah, now I'm doing this.
I think a lot of it was the money I had saved up. So it wasn't as much of a risk for me to put $50,000 down on a house if I had $100,000. That was a big part of it.
How does a college student save $100,000? Because aren't college students always broke, right?
I was curious about the habits you had to
Eating
do that.
ramen noodles, right?
Exactly.
I think the average college student looks at college like an entitlement where they deserve to go to school and have an experience. What you're learning, how it's going to be useful, they don't even ask themselves that question. It's just, this is my right. Mommy and daddy are going to pay for me to go to this school, and I deserve an experience where I just have fun. It's kind of like an extended adolescence. There's very little
drunk the whole time.
Yeah.
It's gonna be sick.
At what point in life can you live that way and actually be okay? But for whatever reason, college has adopted that culture. And I had to go to the cheapest school I could find. My parents paid as long as I went to the cheapest school, and I maintained grades, and I worked. So I went and found restaurants where I could make the most money I could, the nicest ones. And I drove an hour to go work at the fine dining type restaurants. And I had to learn about wine. I had to learn about cuts of steak, like things that most people that came from like a blue collar background, we didn't get exposed to that. But you could make really good money at that time with the tips if you did a good job. And then I also became very efficient at that job. Like I approached it like basketball, no wasted steps. Do more than one thing at a time. Like I liked the feeling of when you're playing in a basketball game, it's very fast paced. You're looking at what the landscape is and it changes really quickly. It's this dynamic situation. The restaurant world was very much like that. This table needs this table needs that. I want to make sure that I look like I'm calm and I'm not busy, so they seat me with another table. But behind the scenes, I'm getting the bus boys. I'm like, I need you to get out there and go do this and this and this, and trying to organize all that chaos. But I mean, I think my first couple years, my goal was to save $500 a week. And this is, 2001 through 2004. So that was a little bit more money than what that is now. And then my last couple of years, I was in an even nicer place. And so I was trying to save about $800 a week. But if you just save $500 a week at the end of the year, that's $26,000. 4 years of high school, that's $100,000.
So like with that, like what did you not waste your money on that you see? Because like a lot of people buy food out a lot. Like what were you doing with your money as far as a budgeting aspect?
That's a great question. I had a gym membership, a cell phone, car insurance, and gas. And anything above that, I looked at a luxury. Okay. So I was lucky that I could live at home and I could eat mom's leftovers. I recognize that everybody has that opportunity, but I did. So I took advantage of it. I wasn't spending money like when my buddies were going to Cancun on these big vacations, right? I sort of had the mentality that, okay, you're going to spend $300 on a plane ticket, $500 on your hotel, $200 on food. For everybody else, that's $1,000. But I'm like, I'm going to be gone from work for 4 days. I could make $200 every day. That's actually an extra $800 on top of the $1,000. That's an $1,800 trip is the way that I was looking at it. So I wasn't as inclined to spend money on dumb things because I knew I wanted to save. I think that's a big piece of it, is like, if you know what your goal is, it's way easier. Like we were saying, now that I'm doing jujitsu, I eat healthier. It's easier to eat healthier. I don't want to have a bloated stomach when I get there, right? Before that, food was a struggle because it was just, I should eat better. I know I should do it, but I just don't want to.
Shit tastes so good.
Yep. I got nothing else going on in life that I'm really excited about. So the next meal you're going to eat is what you're looking forward to, right? You replace that with something else, the role that food plays in your life is sort of diminished. And then it starts to become a function of the other things that I want to do, which I think is something you two probably have like down pat.
You had you said that having a lot of money gave you the confidence initially, and so I'm pretty sure that plays a lot of it into what I'm about to ask. But for someone like me, I've always been interested in maybe potentially investing in real estate, but one, I don't really know where to start exactly. Like, all I know is like I've bought a house, I've sold a house, and I've bought another house. That's all I know how to do, and that's because I call my friend, my real estate agent, like, let's do this, and they're like, cool, we got it, we'll take it from here. But for someone like me in my position, I do have a mortgage. I can't pay it all off right now. Like it's definitely a high price bill for what I make. So I don't have a lot of extra income.
Mm-hmm.
How can someone like me who has a mortgage, has a family, has bills, how can I get into real estate?
The first thing I would say to your average homeowner who wants to buy more real estate is you can't look at it like it's a stock. This is a big mistake everybody makes, is that, a deeper theory that I would have is that most of us approach life based on whatever we did before. So if you ever become an entrepreneur, you have a 1099 job, you're going to think like a W-2 employee, which is the worst thing ever, because the W-2 employees are sort of subconsciously trained to figure out, how do I come to work, do the least amount of work possible to not
Andrew,
get fired, right?
He's describing you pretty well. He's got your number, bro.
Yeah. Nobody in the W-2 world has to go generate income, has to find business. They don't have to put themselves out there like you do when you're an entrepreneur. And then when they become an entrepreneur, they've got this house cat mentality. Like, someone brings me my tuna, I just got to open the can and eat the tuna. I'm not hunting, right? You start to open a business now, there's a fear, like, I'm not going to eat today, that turns you into that jungle cat that wants to go hunt. The same is true. Most people, when they think about investing, they think about the stock market, which more or less is based on buy low and sell high. That is the only way you make money in stocks. The longer you hold it, the better your chances of selling high are, but that's still what you're doing. Real estate has an aspect of that where you can time the market, where you can buy low and sell high, but that's not the fundamentals of how we're doing it. What you actually want to look for is a property that will generate more income than it costs to own it. That idea of cash flow. So the house you live in, if you're the average person, is probably like a tract home in a nice community that your wife really likes, has good schools, and you maximize how much you spend every month in order to make that dream happen for them. The properties that I would look for would be an older home with a basement and an ADU, where I can live in the basement, I can rent out the main house and the ADU, or I can turn the main house into 2 separate units because the floor plan's right. I can rent out the ADU in each unit, and then I'm living in the basement.
ADU, what's that?
It's accessory dwelling unit. It'd be like like an in-law unit, or like, when they have like a little separate studio in the backyard type of thing. Different areas that can be rented, or maybe a triplex, or you live in one unit, you rent out the other 2. So now, even though your mortgage may be $4,000, you're bringing in $3,600 in rent. So you're living for $400 a month. And you're getting tax benefits, right? So you're giving up some of the comfort in order to have this asset that functions very efficiently, and then every year the rents are going to go up. So you're bringing in $3,600 the first year, then you're bringing in $3,800. The next thing you know, you're at $4,000. You're living for free, and then you buy another house like that next year, right? That would be the approach that you would want to take if you're like, I want to get into real estate investing, but I don't want to take a big risk. You got to stop thinking about just, how do I buy it for less than what I think it's worth, or how do I buy it and then sell it later. If you have that cash flow component, you've now put power in your hands. It's like when you're playing poker and you're not one of the blinds and you choose if you want to play that hand or not. That's how real estate investing works for me. If I'm going to sell, it's because the market looks really good and I have better opportunities, but I don't have to, because it's bringing in enough money that it can pay for itself, or I can make additional income. That would be like, if you could just get that part down and then slowly look for the type of properties that work that way, all the rest of it will fall into place.
And then is it difficult to get into one of these houses? The reason why I ask, because the person that bought our previous house, something got caught up in escrow because somebody got confused where they were under the impression that he was going to rent that house out, but he actually was going to live there and rent out his old house. So like it almost like ruined the entire deal with like my current house and everything. So is it more difficult to purchase a home with the intention to rent, because you have to let them know up front, right, that you're not going to be living there?
What you're describing, I can tell you what happened, was the person buying the house the lender wasn't informed of what the purpose was, and that came up during escrow.
Yeah.
So one of the things that people will do is, if you're buying a house to rent out, they want a much bigger down payment. That's considered an investment property, which immediately to a lender is more risky. So they want you to put down 20, 25%. Well, if you're buying a house to live in, you can get by with 3.5% down, 5% down for really good loans. They're not like a scary, adjustable rate mortgage. So the person probably said, I'm buying this to live in, and then later on said, well, I'm going to rent it out. Or the lender thought that they were just going to rent it out. And that's what stopped everything. So no, it's not hard if you're just honest up front with what your intentions would be.
It's just costs more up front, basically.
They're going to have to put a lot more down if they wanted to rent it out.
Got it.
So quick question about that. So if you were to say, I'm going to buy it to live in, you live in it for a year, and then you begin renting it out, is that problematic?
Right.
Nope.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay.
Totally.
Do you have to refinance it to let them know?
I know. This is like, logically, you would think that's the way it should work, but that's just not how lending regulations go. I call what you just described the sneaky rental tactic. I'm a huge proponent. So you buy it.
I thought he was going to say, like, you can't do that with it. Okay, cool.
You buy it with 3% down, 3.5% down,
yeah.
right? And then you live in it for a year, 9 months, whatever it would be. You decide you want to move on with your life. You're just allowed to do whatever you want with it. Yeah. When you bought it, your intention was a primary residence, and that's the only question that they ask.
Is that the time frame, 9 months?
I don't know that there is a time frame, right? I want to be careful with how I say it correctly. My understanding is that in most loans, did you have the intention of occupying it as a primary residence? They can't legally force you to. Your job changes across the country. Some sick family member happens. You just then have to rent it out. I'm not going to say that happens all the time, but that happens all the time.
That's
and there are some weird things too, right? With California state law of like, I think it's like anything over 14 days. If you stayed at like a vacation home, anything more than like 14 days, then it's got to be considered something different. Or
so when it comes
I not know
to
what I'm talking about them all.
No, that's good though. I'm glad we're bringing it up. What you're talking about is like short-term rental legislation. So let's say you buy a house and you want to go then put it on Airbnb. In most cases, I mean, if it's somewhere no one wants to rent, this isn't going to work. But say it's a place where there's a demand for it. You're going to make more renting it out as a short-term rental than you would be just putting a tenant in there and collecting money every single month. But there's going to be more work to it. What happens is this is working so well for so many people that, like, let's take Scottsdale, Arizona. This is blowing up over there. That house would normally sell for $700,000, but some investor is happy to pay $850 for it because it's going to generate so much stinking money.
It might generate $2 million for the year or something.
It doesn't matter what the comparable show, to them it's worth more. So they pay $850. So now everybody else who wanted to buy that property can't afford it anymore. So in certain areas, you get like Hawaii, this is happening over there. You have the local Hawaiians that are kind of pissed because these people are coming in and just throwing money at properties.
Don't
and
they not allow Airbnb there?
That's why. So they go to their local government and say, we don't want this Airbnb because it's jacking up home prices. And so then they say, well, you can't rent it out for less than 30 days at a time or less than 14 days. Otherwise, it's a short-term rental.
Right. And so with you, I mean, you're busy. I'm pretty sure you are pretty handy, but I don't think when tenants are calling saying that their toilet's backing up, that you're over there with the plunger. So when I did rent, we did have property managers because the owner of the house, I think, was out of the state as well. Is that something that you would recommend for everybody just starting out, or is that more when you've kind of established enough homes that it can kind of pay for itself type of thing?
The best way that we describe that is look at, if you were to go change the locks on that property, how much money did you save and how many hours did you spend, and come up with an hourly rate. And if that hourly rate is less than what you can make doing something else, hire it out. The caveat I'll throw into that is that's only looking at it from a financial perspective. I think there's also like an energy component that I work into when I do something or when I don't. So if there's a task that I just hate doing, it just drains me of energy, the rest of my day is going to suck because I had to do that thing, I'll hire it out even if it's more expensive. And there's certain things that aren't really worth my time, but I just get a kick out of doing it. I really like it. I factor that in there too. Because if you go do something that gets you juiced up and like, you know, sometimes I'll step in on our listings and I'll negotiate an extra 25 grand for the client or something, right? I'm going to make a couple $100. It doesn't really mean that much to me. But if I know I just saved that person 25 grand, the next time a person comes my way and they say, I don't want to pay 6% commission, I want to pay 4%. I can fight that battle because I know I just saved my last guy 25 grand and you're fighting with me over $3,000 or something. So that's the other thing I would work into it. But in general, I don't want to be really, really good at changing light bulbs and changing locks. So I let the person who's already good at that, let him feed his family off the stuff that he does. And then I focus on the parts of the business that I think are better for me to be good at.
I think maybe years ago it was very common, you know, like for my dad, who's like in his 70s. You go to school, you know, you go through like normal school system, and then you go to college. Some point you get married, you start raising a family, and as soon as possible you buy a house. My dad has been a real estate agent for, I don't know, 40 years or something like that. Does buying a house still have the same value as it used to? We're seeing a shift with the kind of value that we place upon college to some degree. Obviously, we can all agree that having more knowledge is always a good thing, and having some education is great. But traditional school, we're seeing some of that kind of shift and change, and just our times are changing quite a bit. Do homes still have a tremendous value? It kind of almost sounds like to me, in just listening to some of what you're saying, is they almost don't seem nearly as valuable as they used to be, except if you're making money on them.
Well, when we talk about value, if it's not about money, what would the rest of the value be?
Well, I just think that's a great question. That is my question. Because everyone thinks that they have to get a house, and not everyone, many people think that they have to get a house, and they'll do anything other than rent. Because renting, you know, they're spending $1,900 a month, and that could go towards me owning something. But it also takes people like 30, 40, 50 years to even own something. And then they own it, but then they don't really ever get an opportunity to really do much with it, except for in some cases where maybe you had kind of a large family and you got to shrink down, and you sell a home and you move into something smaller or something like that. So you kind of understand where I'm kind of coming from.
Is it still the American dream to own your home?
If you are a person who has the capability of earning a lot of money doing something else, it's less important to you. That's the first thing I'll say. So maybe someone in your position having to deal with like the maintenance issues of owning a home, or like the headache of getting pre-approved for a loan. If you're in this spot and you're making good money and you're bringing good value, you're a doctor who's making great money and you got to think about doctor stuff, renting might be okay for that person. Our typical audience is your blue collar American who has a W-2 job and is kind of stuck in a form of a rat race they don't know how to get out of. I think owning a home for that person is massively more important and valuable than it was before.
Owning a home, even if they don't do some of the things you suggested earlier, in like living in the basement and those kinds of things.
Yes, and here's why. This is what I'll say. If you guys look at what a rent was for a house out, you guys from West Sacramento, this is where you've been?
Pretty much,
this area.
Yeah.
What do you think rents were 10 years ago for like a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom
I have
home?
no idea.
How many years ago?
10.
1,600?
No. Mortgage was about 13, so I would say 14.
You think renting was more than a mortgage 10 years ago?
Yeah.
So typically the argument would be that renting is less than the mortgage, so that's why people would do it. So let's say your rent in that case is like $1,100.
Okay.
What's the rent like now?
It's through the roof.
Yeah.
$2,500 or so, somewhere in that range. Okay, so the thing is, when you're renting, you don't have control over what your housing expenses are. Your landlord controls that. Now, I have a football analogy that people say I'm using it too much, so I'm loath to use it. But you guys football fans,
football.
I'm assuming.
He doesn't know nothing about football over here.
That's the one you play with your feet.
Yeah, with your feet.
It's football. It's football. But yeah.
American football.
Yes, American football. Let's take like your dad's generation, right? When he was growing up, the way you won at football was you played great defense, you had a great running game, you pounded the other team, and in the fourth quarter, they were tired, and you ran right through them, right? And you grinded it out, and you won 13-9 or something like that. Have you seen the rule changes we've had in the NFL?
Yeah.
Right? And so how those rule changes affected how the game is played?
Absolutely.
Right? It's all about they want more offense. You can't touch a quarterback. You can't touch a wide receiver. The defense has been hamstrung. If your GM is still drafting really solid defensive players, you're just at a disadvantage because the rules are favoring the offense. So you want to be investing in the area where you're going to get a better return, which is a great quarterback, great wide receivers. Your running back is less important. It doesn't mean they're not important. They're not as important. The way that the country has handled every single problem that we've hit financially has been print more money and stimulus our way out of it. Okay. It's maybe not the best example, but it's like, hey, your body needs to sleep. You need to let it recover. You need to let it rebuild all the things you did to it. You tore it up. Nope, just take some meth. I feel great. I'm on meth, right? I can just keep going throughout the night.
Or like what a lot of people do is they'll take like pre-workout, to do a workout. And we've kind of advised people all the time, man, you're spending money on pre-workout and supplements and you're trying to find all these things. Like just work on your sleep a little bit more.
An economy is just like a body. It needs to have periods of time where it's charging ahead and big progress is made, but some bad decisions are made during that time. Businesses are started that aren't very good. Industries change, right? Like technology increases. So some of those business needs to naturally die, just like nature, just like our body. We've gotten away from letting that happen because a politician doesn't want to be the one holding the bag when you hit that period of time where we need to sleep. They're not going to be voted in. So, and both sides of the aisle, they both learned to do this, have said, let's just print more money. Let's just create more stimulus. Let's just add to the how much money we have in circulation, and it's creating stupid inflation. So this is what I'm getting at. The rules of the game have changed. The NFL scores are inflated from where they used to be because they changed the rules. Money rules in our country have changed as well. Being a millionaire doesn't mean what it meant to be a millionaire 20 years ago. It's very different, right? If you look at how much money is in circulation, it is staggering compared to how much it's been for almost the whole time the country's been in existence, right? So if you're not buying a home, you're losing control of your housing expenses because rents are going to go up every single year aggressively. You're also not being able to charge somebody else what that rent would be as things are going up. And home values are just continuing to increase. It doesn't mean that necessarily real estate is inherently becoming more valuable. It's that inflation is making it more valuable. It's a great way to park your money because you get a better return. That's the best way I'd be able to answer that question.
Yeah, I love what you said. The second part of that kind of clicked and made the most sense to me, and the fact that it's not going to go down. I mean, I guess there's highs and there's some lulls here and there, but in general, it's going to continue to trend upward. And if you have the ability to be able to rent something to somebody else, like how cool is that? If you started now, at 10 years from now, that money will automatically increase without necessarily, I guess, any extra work on your part.
And like you mentioned, you said $1,300 was your mortgage 10 years ago. What do you think that same house's mortgage payment would be today?
Oh, it's going to be over $2,000.
Significantly over that, right?
Yeah, it was a very, very small place.
So what we find is that when you buy real estate, it's usually more expensive than renting. It's very rare that it's actually cheaper unless you do that technique called house hacking that I described earlier, where you rent out parts of the house. But over a 10-year period, there's no way it's going to be cheaper to be renting other than owning. So it is a delayed gratification play, 100%. And so because I know that's how the rules of the game work, I just set my life up around that. When I'm making decisions on what I'm going to invest money in, I know, hey, I could rent the house for $2,500. I could buy it. It's going to be maybe $3,500. Well, if I'm looking at over a 10-year period, that's a no-brainer solid play. So I just got to live beneath my means for 5 years until my rent catches up to, or the mortgage is what now rents are today. And then I can get that nice car that I really want. And then your house is sort of paying for your car.
Do you say for the most part, the priority would be, for people to kind of hone in on being able to buy a home rather than like maybe worry so much about their car, or like where do you think some people are going wrong in being able to be in a good position to be able to own their home?
It's what they're spending their money on. Because in order to have financial discipline, you have to have self-discipline. It is so much easier to just not pay attention to where your money goes. Put it into the thing like the car, the clothes, the trips, the things that other people will see on Instagram, rather than what is actually going to pay you. And so my philosophy is, I can have a Lamborghini if I want it. I can have a Ferrari if I want it. I will not take the money that I am making at my job to buy that. I will put that money in an asset. What that asset pays me, I'm allowed to go splurge on.
I was going to ask, it's actually a pretty difficult question. I'm trying to formulate it correctly. As somebody who's never had a rental property, but as somebody who has been in a rental property renting a house, get towards the end of your contract or whatever it may be, and it's just like you start getting nervous, like they're going to come check out the property. It's definitely okay. But then that next email or letter saying how much more expensive rent's going to be. So one part of that question is like, how do you just kind of look around the neighborhood and see what other rentals are going for, and then that's where your value goes up? And then the other part is like, for you, like let's say the mortgage and the rent are pretty close, but that rent is going to go up. How is it difficult for you to have to tell a family, hey, your rent's going up an extra $200 this year, take it or leave it?
So the first question is, how do you figure out what rents would be? Incredibly easy. Technology just made that really, really easy. So there's a website called Rentometer, spelled like Rentometer. And then Bigger Pockets has a, under their Pro Insights tab, there's a way that you can, just like Zillow will show you what other houses sold for, they'll show you what rents were. Then they'll put together an accumulation and say, hey, your rent should be somewhere between $2,300 and $2,500 based on the square, the rooms. Sick. Incredibly easy compared to what most people are thinking about. Right? Yeah. So then as far as like hey, is this family going to have to pay $200 a month more? When we're looking for tenants, I'm usually leaning towards a person who works in an industry where I can expect them to be getting raises every year. Okay. I'm trying to think of it. You don't want to have your tenant work at Blockbuster. Right. If that makes sense. Now, if they're in the tech industry, if they're in an industry that's growing, I'm assuming they've been getting raises that would be more than whatever that's going to be, because while inflation makes everything more expensive, if you're in the right industry, you should be getting paid more.
If it's a family member, say, hey, congrats on that raise that you got. Yeah. By the way, it's a great
I think most people expect rents are going to go up, but here's why I encourage home ownership. Let's say you have a moral issue with, I just don't think I should be raising rents. When you own the house, you make that choice. You can give them a gift of $200 a month of not raising the rent if you want to do it, or you can raise the rent, or you can rent it out to a different family. When you're not the homeowner, you're at the mercy of somebody else. And that's what that's my what Bigger Pockets is trying to encourage people to do, is to take control over their finances, about where they spend their time. If you have a job you hate, this is what I think most Americans do. I'm going to go on a soapbox. They're in a job they don't like. So they show up and they give the worst performance ever. And their mentality is, well, when they pay me more, I'll work harder. Well, what boss ever looks at something like that? Okay. What I think is, if you're in a position in life that you hate, you need to be outworking everybody else with this urgency to get out of that. How do you get into the next level? It's the equivalent of, I hate my body, so I'm not going to work out hard at the gym until I'm strong. I'll work out when I'm strong. That's the mentality people have. There's something addicting when you realize you're actually in control of the outcome you get. You have more intelligence than you think. Our capacity for intelligence actually increases as we work harder and we learn new things. And real estate is just like your average Joe's best vehicle to just slowly, steadily, blue collar style, start to build wealth and put yourself in a position where you have some autonomy over your life, as opposed to living underneath somebody else's autonomy, where you're just bitter that your landlord's increasing rent on you all the time. And then people start looking to the government to sort of like, hey, we got a problem over here, you need to go fix it. Now you're giving up even more control of your life as you let the government try to dictate what you can and can't do. And that's not good for anyone's confidence or their overall experience that they're having in the world.
With someone like Dave Ramsey's approach to everything, do you think like his like baby step method and all that stuff, I'm not sure if you're too familiar with it, but okay. Because he's very popular, and his methods definitely helped us get out of debt and then get into our first home, and then we kind of just implemented the same strategies to help us get to the next home. So I'm just curious, for other people that might be listening who are thinking about following his plan and all that, what's your opinion on that strategy?
Dave Ramsey is incredibly effective for people that do not manage debt very well, or they don't manage money very well. So he's a defensive guru, for lack of a better word. He's going to teach you how to control your finances, not spend money on dumb things. He's got methods like, don't use a credit card for something, because if I go spend $125 on a dinner with my credit card, I could forget I did it the next day. If I actually have to take $125 of cash out of my wallet, that hurts. I'm less likely to go do that if I can't afford it. So I'm a big proponent of that. Just like many things in life that people tend to villainize aren't good or bad in and of themselves. It's how you use it. And debt is one of those things. If you're using your debt to buy cars you can't afford and clothes you can't afford and eat out when you could be eating at home, it's really wise to limit that. Now, where he and I would disagree would be, as a real estate investor who feels like I'm knowledgeable about how money works, debt is an asset for me. This amplifies how much I can do in a good area, right? So like debt can crush you, it can spiral you down into trouble, but it can also accelerate your returns. If I can borrow money from a bank at 3% and I can go invest it at a 12% return, and then I'm paying off that debt with the money that's coming from the tenant, and I'm hedging against inflation, it becomes a like relatively not risk-free, but smaller risk way of amplifying your return. So I like Dave Ramsey because I think he's doing a lot of good in the world. I think there's too many people that are speculating in real estate. They're treating it like the stock market. I'm going to buy a house and hope it goes up. They're taking on debt when they don't understand what they're doing. That's not ever wise. But if you're knowledgeable and you understand how the thing works, well, debt actually can be like a supercharger.
So this makes me curious because like when you were talking about, you when you bought your first house in 2009, then you bought another one, you were just kind of accidentally ended up in real estate. But obviously you also went into a learning process, learning new things. Because when you're a cop, I don't think were you spending time learning about real estate stuff? Or go ahead. My big question is just like, at this point, there's podcasts like the Bigger Pockets podcast. You guys have a lot of different hosts that talk about real estate investing from every single level. But what are some other things that you think people should be paying attention to, not just on the real estate side, but also on the money habits side of things? Like what's the other individuals that are unlike Dave Ramsey that can teach people how to do other things with their money that you pay attention to and you think are valuable?
I think the macroeconomic factor, what our government and our country is doing with the money supply, it would be like the equivalent of a GM who says, I'm not going to pay attention to the rules the NFL is putting in place. If you're responsible for building the roster, that would be wildly reckless to do that. So there's certain people that I listen to that just talk about the overall state of like the country and the money supply. Patrick Bet-David is somebody that I follow. I really like that guy's stuff. I think he understands sort of like the holistic approach to business in general. But what it will always come down to is your control over yourself, right? Are you so risk averse and afraid from your own lack of confidence that you keep working that job as an accountant that you know isn't getting it done, isn't giving you the life that you want, but it feels so safe and secure that you can't let it go? And so I also spend a lot of time listening to people that kind of attack the mindset issue, right? Like many of us live life much more like a computer program than we realize. We just fall into a set of habits. We do the same thing. Like my diet, a huge piece of that I'm sure is like whatever bacteria is in my stomach at a time that's talking to my brain saying, hey, you need to go eat another carb or something like that, right? Well, you get that out of there, those cravings start to go away. It's not as hard. There's a lot of things in life that work the exact same way. You just summed up
diet faster and easier than anyone we've ever had on the show. And we've had every doctor and scientist that you could think of.
So money is very similar to that, right? Like you asked, when did I start studying it, right? When you started going to jiu-jitsu, did you find yourself YouTubing every jiu-jitsu video you could get your hands on?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're like, I don't like that feeling of getting my butt kicked at class.
Yeah.
And now you're interested in it, right? There's this theory in the Bible that where your treasure is, your heart will be too, right? So what you invest in, you will care about. So that's why we start watching videos when we go to jiu-jitsu. It's the same goes for when I bought that rental property. I'm like, no, I don't want to screw this up. So now I'm going to pay attention to it. You get into a relationship you really like, you start listening to like relationship advice stuff because you don't want to mess that up. So there's definitely this like, you got to, like, if you guys someone starts going to the gym, they start lifting weights. They're like, well, what's the right form? And when should I be working out? And what should I be eating? You get immersed into that world. Okay. I think too many people wait until they have the feeling that's like, yeah, I really am excited about working out. You're never going to get it till you get in the gym and you go do a workout and you feel like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't like that feeling. You start asking questions. You start paying attention to the person who looks like they do know what they're doing, right? And you sort of spiral in that direction. So when I bought the house, it immersed me in the culture of real estate investing. I found Bigger Pockets. I started reading everything I get my hands on. That's kind of how it turned out.
Pet Project family, how's it going? You guys know who Stan the Rhino Efforting is. We've had him on this podcast 3, 4, 5 different times. Well, we've partnered with Stan and Vertical Meals. It's going to be awesome because now you guys can have Stan Efforting's cooking and his nutrition sent right to you, right to your door. Andrew, can you tell the people how to get it and save?
Absolutely. You guys got to head over to verticaldiet.com. At checkout, enter promo code Power Project for free shipping. And if you order 16 meals or more, you're going to get 2 additional ones. Again, that's at verticaldiet.com, promo code Power Project. Links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes. Let's get back to this podcast. What about investing out of state? I was just looking at prices in San Antonio, and man, there's some really nice properties out there that are, in comparison to California, very cheap.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like I'm not in a position to even like travel right now, but like, would you recommend that somebody like not even bother with that until they got some local stuff going, or can you just maybe if you aren't able to travel right now, investing in something like that, it's just not the right time.
The good news for you is my first book was called Long Distance Real Estate Investing.
Oh, sick.
I basically document the strategies of how I buy out of state, right? The short answer to your question would be, don't look at just price point as a measure of risk.
Right.
Cheaper house does not mean less risk. In many cases, it can actually be the opposite. The fundamentals you want to look at if you're going to invest anywhere would be, how much does it bring in an income and what are my expenses? And what for someone in your position you want to get good at is recognizing the patterns that continually pop up. So like the income is very easy to find. You can go on Rentometer and you can say, what would a 4-bedroom, 2-bedroom house rent for around here? And they're going to give you a pretty good range. So then the next question is, what are the expenses I frequently see? Well, your mortgage will be your biggest one. Then you've got property taxes. Now property taxes in Texas will be like 2 to 3 times what they are in California. So that's the thing where an out-of-state investor could get themselves in trouble if they don't know to look for the difference there. Mm-hmm. Then your homeowner's insurance, whatever you pay a property management, and however much you're going to budget for repairs that have to get done. But really, like that's not that complicated. There's not a whole lot with real estate investing. This is why the average person can do it pretty well, where you look at and see, well, how much is it making and how much is it going to cost me? And then the decision becomes pretty clear if you should buy it or not.
Solid.
For what we were talking about, where do you think, because no one really knows what's going to happen in the future. No one absolutely knows.
Yeah.
But, I don't know how many people knew what was going to happen in 2008. You know what I mean? So with we're constantly printing money, like you were just saying. Where do you think things are going? If someone's interested in doing things with real estate right now, is there anything they need to be thinking about in terms of the future that maybe you've noticed and other people aren't?
That's a great question. And we were saying earlier, when you get involved in something, you start studying it.
Yeah.
Now that I'm on this podcast and people are making decisions that affect their family and their livelihood off of what I say, you spend a lot of time digging into that question because it's scary to think about if I give you bad advice. Now, most people in my position will always default to, houses are so expensive, put your money away, wait for the crash. It's so easy to tell somebody. It's like saying, don't work out, you could pull a muscle. You could get hurt, right? Your mom's always going to give you that advice, right? Mm-hmm. But what kind of life does it look like if you never work out because you don't want to get injured? So there's a degree of risk you just have to learn how to mitigate and prepare for. Like I heard you talk about on the Nikki Rodriguez podcast that you had a stress fracture in your foot, right?
Yeah.
You said, well, I'm going to adapt. I'm going to work out my upper body. It's going to get bigger than it's ever been. I can still do some leg curls, that type of thing. When you have that attitude in life, you're kind of fearless. It just doesn't matter what the defense throws at me because I'm Peyton Manning and I can look at that and say, okay, they're going to stack
Omaha.
the box. There it is. Call an audible, run a different play. So as far as what I expect to happen for the country, it's not what I would want to happen. This is unpopular. I think the best thing we could do is to let that recession happen that needs to happen. Mm-hmm. It's going to be hard times, but we are spending way more money than we're bringing in taxes right now. We have several fundamentals that are not smart, like how much stuff we get from China, right? We're giving away a lot of autonomy, that word again, coming in to the Chinese as far as our own supply chain and where we get materials from. So there's things I'd like to see change, but I don't think it will happen. Now, like you mentioned, I don't have a crystal ball, it's speculation. It's hard for me to see a politician who's going to come in and say what I just said. Guys, we got to tighten the belt. 15 years, it's going to be really tough. I'm taking away your carbs. I'm taking away your sugar. You're going to be on a diet you don't like, and I'm going to be the personal trainer that shows up and kicks your butt every day. But trust me, this is what's best for you. Not many people sign up for that. You're going to go vote for the person that says, no, you deserve to eat that cinnamon bun, right? It is your right. You should be having more sugar. And as a politician, I will make sure that we have cinnamon buns every morning available for you, right?
I'd vote for you.
There you go. That is kind of how, that's how American culture has shaped up. So
I just got excited. I'm like, this is somebody I can get behind. Yeah. If you get really all that political, but now
peanut butter cups in there, you got my vote.
Shit.
You see what I'm saying?
Got me excited.
So whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, I don't think it matters. They're going to tell you what you want to hear. That's how they're going to get voted in. So what I think will happen is they will continue to print and print and print. Just keep making money. Now, they're also not building homes as fast as we need them. We have a severe shortage. If you look at the inventory of think about where you guys seeing homes being built. It's not nearly as much as people that are coming into the country and people that are becoming of home buying age. Mm-hmm. So you combine way too much inflation with too much money going out, with not enough supply. It's tough for me to see real estate prices possibly going down. Now, I think the error that some of my contemporaries are making is they're saying, well, if interest rates go up, home prices could come down. Okay. Or, well, if the economy slows down, home prices would come down. I think it's such a small piece of the puzzle compared to the massive supply problem that we have, that my fear is we're going to hit a point that only wealthy people can own real estate at all. Because if you look at interest rates going up and that makes it less affordable for your average homeowner to buy, that just means the person making 80 grand a year, 70 grand a year in California, but listeners, that's not a ton of money. Some people in Kentucky probably feel like they'd love to be doing that, right? You can scrape your way into a house with a 3.5% down payment and you can actually start building equity. If interest rates went up, it would make the house maybe a little bit less affordable for a guy like me, but it's still wildly better than every other option I have. I can still afford to pay that price. Wealthy people can continue to keep buying real estate, which takes power out of your average Joe, which is where I'd like to see that opportunity going to. So I'm afraid unless we have like a policy change where they make it a priority to build houses, build more housing, that what is actually going to happen instead is you're going to see prices get so high that people go complain to politicians and say, you need to do something, I can't afford a home. And they just expand the Section 8 program. So maybe like half the country, 75% of the country is on Section 8 because rents are unaffordable and you're giving away autonomy, right? And then eventually you get to a point where you're like, look, I can't make enough money at work. Robots are doing all the jobs. I'm already dependent on the government for Section 8 housing and stimulus. We might as well just go to universal basic income. And now you're at a point where you just lost the ability to build wealth for yourself, right? Like you'll survive, but it's not the America that we're used to. So my fear is that's kind of the direction we're going in. And even though I see home prices are going up, I'm not just telling people to buy because I have a real estate team. I'm buying real estate myself at pretty big clips.
Do you think that, we'll just pretend that the mortgage, everything crashed.
Okay.
Now houses are significantly cheaper. Will rent follow as well?
No, it never does. And this is another reason why you hear me speaking so confidently about owning real estate. So
it protects you.
Yes. It's like the example I have is when real estate prices are going up, it's like you're climbing a mountain, you get higher and higher and higher. Well, at a certain point, prices go down and you would theoretically crash. That's how the stock market goes. But your rent is like a belay that stops you from going down. Rents did not go down during the last crash. When we had a 2010, they actually went up because what happened is everybody lost their home. They needed a place to live.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of rentals available. So now they actually, even though home prices went down, rents went up because there was so much more demand for the few rentals that were out there. So I've asked a lot of people that are older than me that have seen several cycles, have you ever seen a time that rents went down? Nobody has ever told me yes. The only thing that would make rents go down would be if population left the area. So you get like Detroit. When the auto industry closed, rents will definitely go down there. But that wasn't because of like an economic crash. That was really geographically specific to the industry that fled there. So that's another reason why I doubled down aggressively with buying real estate, because even if it drops from 500,000 to 200,000, my rent probably went up a little bit. I just keep collecting rent, weather the storm, it goes back up to $1 million, and then you have the option if you want to sell again.
You said something earlier that I think is really valuable. You said allowing your assets to pay for like extra things.
Yes.
Is that still a rule that you follow?
1,000%. So now I have more different kinds of assets, right? I have some corporations where I'm making money, and I have real estate where I'm making money. I have short-term rentals, but that principle still is 100% true. I live way beneath my means just because that's my conservative nature. But the money I do spend only comes from cash flow that comes out of properties that I've already bought. I guess a good example for you two would be if you're working out and you're just hammering it at the gym, you can afford to eat different kinds of foods versus if you didn't work out at all, you got to be a lot more stringent with what you spend money on. So if you get a person who's like, I just can't live by this diet, I just need these things. Well, then you need to be working out more, right? That's exactly how I've looked at wealth building. If I want a better lifestyle, I just have to invest my money and get an asset paying for something. So what happens is if you buy a car, you'll never buy a house. The money for the down payment goes to the car. If you buy a house, eventually the house will pay for the car. And that house will pay for your car for the rest of your life. You can get whatever car you want every single time. And if you get 5 houses, now that house can pay for a vacation house and a car and the vacations you want to take and however you want, like the pool in your backyard. As long as your assets are paying for your luxuries, you never have to deny yourself. But if you go the other way around and you go for the luxury first, you never get out of that hole. And that's how most people's finances end up working.
Yeah, I've always looked at things that way. Rather than thinking something's too expensive, I just think I'll just figure out a way to make more money.
Yes. And especially if then you buy the thing and that thing helps you make more money. So there's some people that have figured out like, hey, I'm a really good lawyer. Well, if I buy this Lamborghini, everyone will see it and they'll know I'm a good lawyer and I'll get more business, and it actually helps you in both. So I'm a big proponent of looking for those synergies, right? How do I get, and that comes from the sports background. I'm
kind of like this jacket. This jacket's pretty nice.
You like it?
It made me take you more serious. I'm like, this guy's got
It's
a nice
a
jacket.
very
on.
nice jacket. I
What kind
found
of jacket
myself
is it?
looking at that.
Yeah, I can't stop staring at it.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you guys saying that. I'm typically like, I don't do great with clothes. That's something I'm learning how to do.
You crushed it today.
better.
What kind of jacket is that?
I don't know, actually. You want to check the tag?
Yeah,
for
we'll
me?
figure it out later.
All right.
It'll get weird on the show here.
you guys took your clothes off with Nicky Rodriguez. It can't get worse than that.
Yeah.
We
Right?
did do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Everybody. I mean, how often are you taking off your clothes that you forget that you even did that?
In Nsima every day, but I did forget that as well. Yeah,
I didn't forget. It was a great time.
I forgot. Wow.
Nicky Rodriguez, he's a handsome guy.
That
He,
dude
he
is
will get people to take their
Plus,
clothes off.
yeah, exactly.
He can kill everybody. So
That's
That
true.
too. What about for again, kind of going back to just like a regular average American family trying to get into a home, and you already know what this looks like. The house is, we'll say, $500K. The value, what's it called? When they come and check the value to make sure
The appraised value?
the appraisal, it comes back at 500.
Mm-hmm.
The bank will loan them 500, but here comes an investor who's willing to put 600 with the 100 cash, or all of it cash, I should say.
Yeah.
They can make up the 100 is what I meant to say. This is their third time that they've lost a house to an investor. How can this family have better odds in getting into their home?
That's a great question. And that is what the David Greene team, real estate team, has to solve all the time. So the mistake people make, in my opinion, is they keep doing the same thing that is not working. They're going for the prettiest house they can possibly find, been on the market for 4 days in the best neighborhood that needs no work. And then there's 12 other people that want it, and they approach it like they're competing with the seller. This is one of the things I talk about in the real estate books that I'm writing right now. The first one's called Sold, and there's like a series of those. You're not competing with the seller when 12 other people want that house. You are competing with the 11 other people that want that property, and they bring the wrong mindset. They're like, well, they want 500, see if they'll take 495. Meanwhile, someone else is like, this is my 5th time I'm getting this one, I'll pay 600. And it sounds like, well, you just don't get the house, but there's actually this big emotional price you pay when you get super excited and you tell your parents and you're showing the Zillow page to everyone around you and you're thrilled, and then you get crushed, right? Oh, the girl said no, she doesn't want to go out with me. I lost on the house. Like, you're not going to keep chasing these girls if they keep saying no. At a certain point, you just like tuck your tail and you're like, okay, I quit. I don't want to do this anymore. So don't set yourself up for failure. Like, one of the things that we do and I train my agents to do is your job is not just to be an order taker for that client. Hey, I'll take a Coke. I'll take a ranch. Go get me what I want. You got to tell them what they don't want to hear, which is that, hey, for your budget with the loan we're working with, that's not a house you can get. You need to be looking at houses that cost $450,000 that may be $500, or we need to look at something that's been on the market for 14 to 30 days. Okay. There's something about it that has good bones, but it's ugly. Mm-hmm. Or it's on a busy street, but you don't have kids, so you can live with that. Something like that actually helps you get your foot in the door, and then plan your life around building to get that house that you want. You can't be swinging for a home run right away. And part of like what's heartbreaking for me is I'll see people come in and they'll chase after those ones and they won't get them. And then they'll do this for 9 months and they'll quit. And then 6 months go by and then they come back in and now they can't afford that house at all because prices have gone up so fast. They just got nothing. So it's one of those reality checks where sometimes you just have to be okay with what you can actually get and make that work and build towards your goal rather than walking in and just expecting to crush it on the first shot.
Yeah, and I'll just share my experience for anybody that's listening that maybe it isn't believing you right now. We moved into a house in South Sacramento. We're familiar with the area, but if you're not, South Sac is not the greatest of areas. The house was small. It was nice though, but just like you said, it was on the market for a while. When we went to go check it out, somebody had put in an offer, but then they pulled out. So I'm like, okay, well, what's the deal? The deal was the neighbors, who were actually extremely nice, were very, very messy, but they were nice. So we ended up getting that house. I'm going to screw up the numbers, but we ended up making like $100,000 on it because we sold 2 or 3 years later. And now we moved into Elk Grove, which is an extremely nice neighborhood in Old Elk Grove. So like,
and your South Sac house paid for your Elk Grove house. Your
well,
asset?
not in total, but it paid for
your down
the
payment.
down
I'm saying,
payment
right?
and then some.
Yes.
So it in a span of only like a little bit over 3 years, we had seen the house that, man, it would be nice to do that, but holy shit, we're gonna have to do it over here first.
Yeah.
That stepping stone, and that shit does work. But we also lived within our means. We got rid of all our bills before we got into that house, and then we didn't accrue any more.
So you built your life around your goal.
Yes.
That's really, I'd sum up, that's what I encourage people to do.
Yeah.
Don't look for a situation that you don't have to change anything about yourself at all, that you just walk in and it's perfect for you.
Yeah. And then to top it all off, the mortgage payment that we were paying in the ghetto is the exact same payment that we are paying right now in a nice neighborhood. So it really is a dream come true. Now the new goal is to not have that mortgage and have investment properties.
Well, what you may do is sell that Elk Grove house, take the gains from that, buy yourself one in Roseville or Folsom or something that you really like, have a couple $100,000 left over, and use that as a down payment for your investment properties.
Yeah. Yeah. How accurate is because I'll still, because we use Zillow, right, to search for everything. So I still get updates for the last neighborhood, and I get them obviously now in the new neighborhood. How accurate are those? Because if that's the case, like, we are doing very well again.
It's a good ballpark. You don't want to use that when it comes to actually selling your property, but it is a decent ballpark. So you've done very well again, and you're going to continue to do good. So what I would actually say is, what could be tricky for you or possibly problematic would be, you say, well, I'm doing really great on my Elk Grove house, so I made a good decision. What I would be looking at is, I did a really good thing with Elk Grove. It's going to continue to do good. How do I do this 3 or 4 more times without taking on a ton of risk? Because prices are going to continue to go up. The tide are going to rise. You want more buoys in the water as that's happening.
What about attachment? We love this house, and it would be hard for me to go home and have that conversation, to tell my wife, my daughter. My son doesn't understand me just yet. He's about to be 10 months old, so that'll be an easy one. But to be like, we're gonna invest in something else and move on.
You'll probably only like that house for so long, I think.
Yeah.
Like, you've only been there for what, a year?
A little bit over a year, yeah.
Yeah, I think 2-3 years from now, when he's mentioning you're going to probably continue to do better. When you continue to do better, you'll probably have different taste buds at that point.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
Be a little hungrier, maybe.
I think you got to paint a picture for your family, like your wife in this case, that is, hey, this is our overall plan. And if we own enough real estate or we make enough money, we can have this dream. Now, by comparison, your house seems much less important. If you don't have that, that's where the attachment is elevated in your own mind. And then the reality is, you could buy like a duplex or a triplex. You could move into one, rent out the other 2, bring your housing costs down. Now you got 2 properties, rent out your Elk Grove house. And if you hate the duplex, you can move back into your house, right? There's nothing that prohibits you. And then people get stuck on that a lot of the time too. They're like, but what if I hate it? Can you take a year out of your life to live somewhere that you don't love and then just move back into your other one later?
What are some, because like we've been talking a lot about, like, getting into your first home, et cetera, but you moving into sales, starting off as a police officer, what did you just force yourself to get better with people? I'm assuming you looked up resources, you looked up things in terms of getting better at relationships, getting better at dealing in person to person, sales, conversation, etc. What were some things that helped you get better at that skill?
I joined a Keller Williams brokerage, and they had very, very good training. So I started going to events and learning from guys like Gary Keller, who in that real estate space, he's a genius. He's very, very intelligent, and has done this for so long that it was one of those things, well, if Gary says to do it, I can just trust. Like, if I wanted to start working out and Mark, you said, hey, do your form this way, I'm not arguing with you about how that would work, right? Either of you two. So it was very easy for me to have that mentor, that guy that would say, hey, here's the things you have to do different. What he really did was he taught me how to think like a business owner. Because that was not a skill that I had. Cops are not business owners at all, right? We're that W-2 worker. So that helped a ton, and I immersed myself in that world. I didn't just kind of like pick and choose. I just went to class after class. I would meet other agents that were doing really well, and I would pick their brain constantly. I think one thing that I encourage other people to do anytime you're trying to learn anything is learn it with the intention of teaching it to somebody else. So if every day you go to jujitsu and they're teaching you a certain arm bar, and as you're learning it, you're thinking, how am I going to tell my little brother how to do this or something? It sticks with you so much better. So because I hired an assistant relatively quickly and I started bringing agents to help with me, everything I learned, I had to translate it to how I would teach them. And the gaps in your knowledge become very apparent when you start to like try to teach somebody else how to do something.
Back to, investing stuff. I had caught
getting a free coaching session.
I know, dude. I'm taking full advantage, and then I'm gonna get your number and then blow your phone up again. I had got interested in all of this stuff. And when I say interested, I mean like I would kind of peek through it, but I never researched. I never tried to learn. I never tried to do anything. It just piqued my interest. I would see a lot of people flipping houses, and I know we're talking about renting and stuff, but what about as far as buying the fixer-upper with the intention to either sell or rent? Should somebody be looking into something like that to get in there a little bit quicker or a little bit easier, a little bit less risk? I know what you said about risk earlier. Or should it be something that, okay, maybe there's not that much stuff to do to it, and then I can get somebody renting or I can get somebody purchasing much faster?
So was the question, should I look for a fixer-upper versus a turnkey house, or
Yes.
was it more
Yeah,
about
yeah.
flipping versus buying?
Let's just turnkey.
Okay. I don't know that the risk is necessarily less with a fixer-upper. Your upside is more in general because you're getting it at a better price. But the risk is more associated with how your personal finances can handle the costs associated with owning that property. So if you're, saving $2,000 a month and you get a property that's going to possibly cost you $2,000 a month, regardless of if it's a turnkey or if it's a fixer-upper, that's risky for you. The only time you lose in real estate is if you can't make that payment and the value of the house is less than what you can sell it for. It's kind of like firearm safety, right? Like if you should never point your firearm at someone that when you're not planning to shoot, and you should never put your finger on the trigger. But if one of those things goes well, you're not going to have an accident. Okay. Like that's one of the things I really like about real estate is that it almost takes the perfect storm before you're actually going to lose it. So what I would say is you should look for fixer-upper properties, or more importantly, something less than market value because of a problem. Fixer-upper is the most obvious one that you're going to see. Okay. Your issue is like a neighbor that's messy. That's a problem other people didn't want to deal with. That made you $100,000 because you're willing to deal with the problem. Pretty freaking sweet, right?
Yeah.
So look for houses that have problems. Don't run away from the hard thing. That's just another mistake that a lot of people make, is when they're trying to find their opportunity, they're trying to do it in a way where this works for me, I don't have to take on any headache. But everyone who makes money, every entrepreneur in our country solves a problem. That is how, and the better problem you solve, or the more problems you solve, the more money you're going to end up making. So I would say you take that same mentality into real estate, and you recognize this is the ugliest house in the best neighborhood, right? This is the nicest house that I can get for the money I have. And you know what? I don't like the risk. So we're going to sell the Benz and I'm going to drive a Civic for a little while, because that's going to kind of decrease my risk profile. And it actually works the same way as like what jiu-jitsu is doing. Now that I'm doing that, I don't want to eat bad food. I won twice. I'm getting exercise and I'm eating better. Like that's one of the ways that when you start paying attention to what your money's doing for you, and you see it can actually make you more money, you spend less and you start to get that return.
And do property managers take quite a bit of the, do they cost a lot?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Typically in California, somewhere between 7 and 10% of the rent is what they're going to take.
Oh, okay.
So it's like
Not too bad.
$100-$200 a month.
That's insane.
What's your issue with consistency in terms of the gym? You mentioned it's not easy for you.
The biggest one would be injuries and getting sick. So like I had a period I was telling you about where for 4 months I lifted all the time. And it was like at the end of that 4 months, I can't believe I'm getting this strong. It was just like literal, like I was seeing big increases. And I had a day where I hit 275 on the bench, which for me was like, I didn't think I was a pretty skinny kid when I was younger. I didn't think I was ever going to hit that.
That's good.
The mistake I made is I then immediately went to the incline bench, was like, what can I do here? And I threw 2 plates on and I messed something up in my shoulder, right? So then boom, I'm depressed. I can't work out. It never got better. And then once I get out of it, it's like I build momentum in other areas of life and I forget that I just haven't gone to the gym. So I think in addition to areas where I'm inconsistent, the problem is I try to make up for that with intensity. It's like, well, I don't go to the gym. So when I finally go, I just want to blow it out. And then I'm sore for a week and a half or 2 weeks. You can't, right? So that's one of the things that jiu-jitsu has sort of forced me to confront, is that I cannot intensify my way to skill. And you got to go and learn and let your body develop these movements and like let it kind of fall into place. And I'm putting a bigger value now in consistency, and I'm trying to rebuild my life around that. So one of the things I did is my assistants control my calendar. I can't keep up with that. So it's blocked in there. These are the days that I'm going to jiu-jitsu. Once I figure out how sore I will be, how tired I will be afterwards, right? Then I'm going to block in, I'm going to the gym at this period of time. So I've got these like rocks in my schedule you can't move, and they got to build around that. I don't know what name you want to call that principle, but that's something I'm finally starting to put more emphasis on.
David Greene principle.
Yeah.
A suggestion would be kind of think of some of this stuff as something like a rental property, which you're encouraging a lot of people to maybe work towards at some point. Having income come in that you're no longer really working that much harder for. I mean, I'm sure there's some concerns of having a rental, or you might need to get a property manager, or like there's a little, there's a little stress there, but you have money coming in from that. You can kind of think of, if you can start to, get yourself in a routine where you're exercising consistently, you can kind of view that as a little bit of like money in the bank. We kind of say on this show that money is muscle, and it's going to help be an amplifier for everything that you do. So if you think about, again, back to the rental, I mean, somebody having whatever amount of money that's going to come in from a rental is going to be an amplifier for pretty much every single anything else that they want to do, whether they want to start their own podcast or write a book or start some other business. Now they have extra money they can kind of play with. So you can kind of view your workouts as being something like that. I'd also say that, first of all, for your shoulder, I would explore looking into finding somebody locally that can work on the shoulder, somebody that is well-versed in like injury, not necessarily just a massage. But that actually should be fairly easy to find someone that could probably help you quite a bit, especially now that you're in jiu-jitsu. I'm sure you can ask around the school and they'll probably say, oh, you got to go to this guy. Like, he's going to be able to help a lot.
Is there a certain title?
It's called active release therapy.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's pretty much one of the ones that I've used over the years. It's been really helpful. And sometimes that's not the answer. You may have actually tore something. There might be something worse in there. And also just explore like lots of different training styles. There's so many different things that you can do. If you flip through some of our podcasts, you'll just see like we've had so many different guests on talking about so many different things. But one of the things that we all love to do, which is really simple, and we can kind of show you on your way out of here today, is just doing some sled work. Just walking with the sled, forward, backwards. Not everything has to be kind of your typical like, leg pressing and curls and overhead presses and stuff. We've found a lot of utility and a lot of exercises that are, I guess you could kind of almost just say they're like movements more so than anything, like where we're doing squats on like a slant board. And again, it's more about the slant board allows you to squat down a lot lower. It's more about the appreciation of having your body be able to express itself in a full range of motion under control, rather than kind of like gritting your teeth and turning purple and trying to lift as heavy as possible. Those things are fun, and you might already kind of dig some of those things. But sometimes it takes a good amount of energy just to even get yourself to think like, fuck, I got to go do that.
Yeah.
Whereas when you start to work out with some of the stuff that we've found, you almost every single time, I mean, every once in a while you might overdo it still here and there, but almost every single time you work out, you feel way better. And it helps you, you're walking out of the gym feeling better rather than like kind of walking out of the gym feeling like wiped out and destroyed and maybe feeling like you're going to barf everywhere.
I think I've noticed that when I do start the day with a workout, eating better is easier to do. You have this like buzz, you don't want to kill it. Yeah. Versus if I don't work out, I'm going to want to like drink extra caffeine or eat bad food to get the buzz, right? Is that like something you guys have found as well?
100%. Yeah. The nutrition and the training, they kind of go hand in hand.
I just don't eat.
Yeah, he doesn't eat.
He does a lot of intermittent fasting. Have you ever tried that before?
Yes, I've tried it, and it was tough to stick with it.
Have you done diets before where you eat like a little bit lower carbohydrate?
That's what I'm doing right now. Definitely less of that. And the key is just having that food around me. If I have it around me, I do pretty well. If I don't, man, like I'm not as willpowered as I want to think when there's not food there and I have to go buy food. That's
you can text me anytime you want, and we can go back and forth, and I can kind of walk you through like, there's always options. There's almost always options. It just kind of doesn't seem like there are because all the delicious foods are the ones that are in the front of our mind, and we're not really noticing that you can actually go through In-N-Out Burger and get a Flying Dutchman and get the burger without the bun. And I mean, there's always some options. But what I'll tell you is that a ketogenic diet, not even necessarily super keto, but like a ketogenic style diet and intermittent fasting, they tend to go well together.
And low carbohydrate.
And a low carbohydrate diet. One of the things that is helpful and what helps make a ketogenic diet work really well is that it works a little bit like fasting. So it's going to assist you and allow you to become a little bit more comfortable with hunger. You'll hear people sometimes say, I had some scrambled eggs this morning with some cheese on it, and I didn't eat again until 2:00, something like that. And so the two tend to go hand in hand. And even as Nsima is pointing out, even just like low carbohydrate, where you're not necessarily trying to eat like tons of fat, because the keto diet, while it is pretty cool, it can be a little weird at times.
Did you two have a struggle when you first started affecting your diet, or was it never really something?
Oh no, it sucked. Trying to do fasting, we both thought it was stupid.
Yeah, it's very uncomfortable for like the first few months, because you're used to eating breakfast, you're used to eating every few hours. But when you learn how to use certain tools like caffeine, electrolytes are extremely beneficial. One thing you'll find is like if you're not hydrated, you'll just usually drink a lot of water. But if you're electrolyte deficient, meaning you don't have like sodium, magnesium, potassium like we have in those element packets, you'll feel hungrier even though you're not actually hungry. You're actually just
because your body's telling you I need this nutrient, and it's telling you through you're hungry.
Yeah, you might even crave like sweets and stuff. Yeah, you get all kinds of weird cravings. That was actually really good, by the way. That chocolate mint.
It was surprisingly.
I don't like mint. I don't think you like mint.
I'm not a mint fan either, but that mint
delicious.
chocolate element.
Tell people where they can get it, Andrew.
You guys got to head over to drinklmnt.com/power project. You guys can get the free sample pack. It's an 8 sample pack. You just got to pay the $5 shipping. Or if you're ready to dive in, just get that value bundle, because you're going to get 4 boxes for the price of 3. No code needed. Just hit the links down in the description as well as the podcast show notes. But again, it's at drinklmnt.com/power project.
But for somebody like you, like the reason why I think fasting works so well for us also is because like we're always like busy. You have so much work during your day. Like for me, it got to a point where I don't even think about food until I'm finally done working. I'm like, oh, I'm actually hungry. Okay, and so we also have vertical meals. These are like, instead of going and getting something normal at fast food, I will sometimes go to In-N-Out and get some Flying Dutchman, which is just like, again, patties and cheese. Delicious. It's fucking amazing. So but I'll if I'm really hungry, I'll have vertical meals right there. So like I don't end up making
just a meal prep
option.
Company.
Yeah.
Well, the meal that I was eating when you walked in, that was a breakfast scramble from Vertical Meals. I forgot the amount of calories, but it had 32 grams of protein, and it tastes phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
And there's just a lot of little things, just making sure you have like protein on hand, you know what I mean, or something, and always an option if you get really fucking hungry. But
you're a big guy, and so the hardest thing is to try to, how the fuck do we manage your hunger? How do we manage, and you mentioned you were heavier just a couple months ago. It's like, how do we manage whatever body weight you were at then? How do we kind of continuously work on that? Because even if you get yourself down to, let's say, like 200 pounds or something like that, or 220 pounds, your body's still going to kind of remember how hungry you were previously. It's like that's going to continue on for a while.
That's a good point.
I used to be 330 pounds, and so like I'm still kind of fighting off that fat bastard. I could weigh 270 by the end of the year, I think, if I
wait 270 in 6 weeks if you wanted to.
Yeah. I think it wouldn't take very long. I'll just start swelling up.
Do it.
Well, it sounds like you guys have really embraced what I was talking about earlier, where you got to build your life around what your goal is. So you guys know this is the areas I get in trouble eating. This is what I have to do to make sure I work out. And now you've got all these cool tips that you figured out. That's what I would just want to encourage everyone.
I'm excited for you, because with all the success that you have, it's all going to be fucking amplified when you can start to kind of master. You can start to kind of master your hunger and master your cravings, and you're just no longer so driven by it. Like it sucks, man, when it grabs you and you feel like you can't fucking do anything about it. But there's something nice about kind of inviting it in, being like, yeah, I'm gonna fucking fast the whole day. Bring it on. Like let's see what happens. And I've messed around with all kinds of different fasting. Sometimes you make the mistake of over fasting, and then you end up binging, but you start to learn from it. You're like, okay, that makes me actually worse than I was without ever exploring it in the first place. But you'll tend to figure out a way to kind of like error correct over a period of time.
I really appreciate that, guys. That is what I love about these things is where, like finances has never been difficult for me. Even as a kid, I was saving birthday money, saving Christmas money. When I hear about people with gambling problems, it's just, I don't judge them because I don't understand that. Like it's never been hard for me to want to gamble. But other areas like exercise and food, I've had periods where I was in very good shape and periods where I look like, the Michelin tire guy. It's terrible. Like that consistency has been tricky. And when you guys are sharing advice and encouragement, and like you said, the ability to text you and reach out in an area that I'm weak, that builds a bond. just where I want to be able to share my information that I have an area of strength with other people that may be weak. And that's another thing that, like, if you can get yourself around people that can help you in the areas that you're weak, man, it's just one of the best forms of brotherhood you could find.
Yeah, we understand. We fucking love food.
Yeah, no, I can eat a ton, but that's the thing that fasting has helped, honestly, all, like, both of us with, is because I've had a voracious appetite. Like, for the longest time for me, like, my thing was like, how can I actually stay lean without feeling like shit? Because whenever I would get kind of lean, I'd be like, I couldn't stay there for a long time. I'd just gain a lot of weight back because I couldn't stick to that. But because fasting has allowed me to become friends with hunger, and not, now when I'm hungry, it's not really an uncomfortable thing anymore. It's not like, oh, I have to reach for food. I'm like, I can wait another few hours because I'm used to that feeling. Now it's like, with that, neither Mark or myself, we're not dieting. Like, we don't look at it as dieting. It's just super easy now. It's not something we even think about. So that happens over time.
It's kind of amazing you guys are able to keep the bulk that you do have if you're not eating all the time.
It's because we don't have any problem putting away food. You know,
and
like
protein especially.
So when it's time to eat, you know, we still eat. But yeah, there's something called just protein leveraging, and it's just very simple. Like, if you just have protein as your main priority, your other functions of your diet can be like a little bit off. But for the most part, I mean, you want to still eat clean food, but having protein be a priority really tends to slow you down in your tracks a lot. So if you were to, if you were fasting for most of the day and then you ate a pound of ground beef, I mean, it's like, you know, you still might be able to pack away some good food. And certainly if you were to switch to, like, you know, going from eating the ground beef to eating like Ben and Jerry's, you'd still crush the whole Ben and Jerry's, because there's something called palate fatigue where you start to get tired of eating kind of the same thing. So if you just kept eating meat, you would probably tap out at some point. But you could literally eat that meat and eat the protein until you're just completely stuffed. And you can even wait another 30 minutes, and you might be hungry again. Say, I'm going to get a second helping. I'm going to get a third helping. It's not going to make a dent in your overall calories for the day. I mean, unless the fat is like some crazy thing through the roof. So that's the way we kind of get away with it. I usually eat about 2 meals a day. Sometimes there might be like a third thing in there, like a protein shake or some fruit or something like that, because I have a sweet tooth. So if I don't cure the sweet tooth thing, then I end up rummaging through my pantry in the middle of the night. So that's not a good idea. So I usually try to mitigate that with protein shakes and fruit and cottage cheese and yogurt and just as many different things as I can throw at that motherfucker as possible. Otherwise, the beast will kind of come out and start to take over.
Well, it kind of sounds like when we were talking about my calendar and how if I put that thing in the calendar, nothing can really go wrong. They got to build around it. What you're almost like, that protein is the spot in your calendar that you're marking. Like, if I'm hungry, I'm eating a bunch of this, and it limits how far you can even get into eating too many carbs or too much sugar because you're full. Is that the idea?
Extremely satiating. Protein is the most satiating macronutrient. I mean, that's why when people do normal diets, they talk about, add a lot of fiber and vegetables in because they want to eat a lot of more carbohydrates, and fiber will bulk and fill your stomach up, but protein does kind of the same exact thing. It's you imagine trying to eat 5 hamburger patties.
Yeah,
you'll get pretty full, you know what I mean? But when you think of like some rice and eggs and whatever, like it's like thinking about eating a bunch of Chinese food. You can put down a fuck ton of Chinese food. You can put down a fuck ton of Chinese food, and you could just keep eating it and shoveling it down, because it's a great mix of protein and some fat and some carbs, right? It's super easy to shovel down. So that's why, protein and fat and minimal carbs is kind of how I operate, and same with it.
But I like what you said is everyone knows you're supposed to do that. Yeah. Okay, but who can do it, right? You're actually giving me a technique that makes it easier to do that, right? And like, isn't it awesome that we have YouTube and social media now that you can talk to some of the most intelligent people that are the best at what they do in the world just by pulling something up on your phone and looking at it.
Oh, it's amazing.
Imagine living like, in the BC area where if you had one smart person in your village, you had to like freaking walk 3 days to find another village to hear a smart person talk.
Well, and they said some really smart shit back then too. It's unbelievable. They had like amazing philosophers, and people knew tons about the stars and shit.
I was
and
just going to say that.
It's like, how the hell did we know anything back then? We barely had like a round wheel. It's like, shit, man. Unbelievable.
But quick question, what, in terms of your daily habits as far as like development and continuing to learn new things? Because like you do a podcast, you're on the Bigger Pockets podcast. So that means that number one, you obviously know a lot about what you do, but my assumption is that you're continuing to learn new things because you need to bring more stuff to your audience. So what's your process in terms of like just not even learning about real estate stuff, but what do you do each day that keeps you productive or what allows you to stay productive?
The first thing I do is, I don't have a name for what this is, but I always set a goal bigger than what I know I can actually do, like a stretch type of a goal. Okay. And often that
How
means
much bigger?
Not so, that's a good point.
It's something that would still have a decent jump off point. Like you could get there. Like you know you can get there.
I can get there, but not the current version of David as I am now.
I see.
Right. So let's say like I hit 275 on the bench. My stretch goal would be like 300, not 500. That I'm just not even want to go, or I'm going to hurt myself trying to do it. Right. So in order to get from 275 to 300, it forces me to sort of reverse engineer what's the process I have to do if I want to go there. It makes me learn things I didn't know. It makes me get stronger in other areas. So what that looks like practically for me is, we want to sell, the goal is to sell $200 million in real estate this year. It looks like we're going to hit that goal, right? So next year, can we do 300? In order to do that, I can't do it with the current agents I have. I'm going to have to get more agents on the team. I don't really have the bandwidth for more. I have to promote another leader.
I hope y'all are listening.
Right. In order to promote a leader, I need to develop a leader on my team. Okay. Now I got to identify who that person is going to be, get to know them, figure out what they look like at a level of excellence. And now I have to help train them to that point. Well, what do I need to know to do that? Now I need to go start listening to YouTube people or reading books or finding other mentors that have the skills and leadership development that I don't have. So rather than sort of saying, I want to go do this and I'm just going to keep doing the same thing until I hopefully get there, it's definitely like a reverse engineer. That's what I did my TED talk on with Matt, was like how you can line up dominoes backwards from your goal and build momentum up to get there. So I think for most people, just setting a goal for yourself that you have to be a better version of you to hit. Like, so this diet goal would be a really good one, right? The David I am now is not going to be able to get there. I'm going to have to learn how to restructure the food I have around me, when I'm going to eating a bunch of protein first. That's going to force me to deal with whatever ways, like we started off this talk with Jacko, where I was saying we cheat in life. Okay. Am I using food to deal with things emotional issues that I don't want to deal with, right? Like that's what most people are doing all the time. This will expose that that's what I'm doing. And then I have the opportunity to like make a different decision. So I've always been competitive, but not necessarily from like an insecure, if I don't think I'm the best, then I'm nothing. It's more that if I'm striving for number one, I have to grow. There's no way to not grow if you're always competing with other people or with yourself, right? So what was the original question that you had phrased?
Your habits during your day that allow you to continue being productive. Like, what are the things that you do each day?
The first thing is I start off the day listening to a video, a podcast, somebody that I respect, like a Jacko Willink. And I recognize as I'm listening, what are the ways that he processes information that I don't. So Jacko's very famous for like, your arm fell off. Good. Right. He's going to like good his way through a bunch of stuff. When I start my day off thinking that way, when things go wrong, it's now fresh in my head. Like, don't be a little bitch about that. Ask about how can I make sure that doesn't go wrong again later, or ask how this is going to make me stronger. So it puts me in that mindset. Then it's sort of managing the chaos that's coming at me from all these directions. So I have the podcast where I'm constantly having to keep up with what's going on in the government. How are the rules changing? How do I become a better speaker? There's certain people I listen to just because they speak well. Henner Gracie is a guy who teaches jiu-jitsu. He's got a mouthpiece on him. That guy can just talk and talk and talk, and you'll just be right. Chael Sonnen is another guy that I just love to listen to. Chael. It doesn't even matter what he's saying. He's so good at saying it that I want to keep listening. And I'm looking to build that skill in my life because I see that that's powerful. Then I'm writing books like all the time. There's a book I'm writing. So I'm trying to figure out how can I get my thoughts articulated into words, because then they translate very easy into on paper. So I'm having conversations, this sounds crazy, with other people all day long that they don't know I'm talking to them, right? So I may be having conversations with you two tomorrow based on what I know about you, as I'm trying to articulate why this was difficult for me or make sure I understand what you were really saying. Then I'm in meetings constantly with the other people on my team where I'm looking at what they're accomplishing, where they're falling short, where they're doing great, and how I could give them better advice to help get them there. So I'm in their head a lot of the day too. Like, man, Johnny's got to be thinking this, and he'd be really good if he could get this part down, or this person always looks for approval and they're so much better when they're decisive in making decisions. what video can I send them, or what advice can I give them? It's sort of a situation where I don't have to be intentional about blocking off time to do that, because the demands of the environment I put myself in would require. Very similar to what jiu-jitsu is like, right? You start rolling, you recognize where you weren't good, you know what you need to do the next day, and there's a very big incentive to go fix that. Like right now, it's just cardio. Can I remind myself to get my body relaxed and only have the parts of my body that need to be working engaged? Because I just go into like fight mode. Like when you're a cop, you're terrified. You're getting in a fight, this person could kill you. You want to end that fight as fast as you can. That does not work in jiu-jitsu with a person who knows how to fight. So I think, like you were saying earlier, you're a big proponent of throw yourself in it and figure it out. If you can do that in a reasonable way, discipline goes out the door. You don't have to be disciplined, because you just don't want to get choked out every single day. You don't want to get
already in it. Yeah,
that's exactly right. You create an incentive for yourself to want to learn. So, and I know the difference between when we're like drilling something and the instructor's showing you the technique and you're like, yeah, I got it, man. This is how you do it. But then you actually get into the role and it didn't work. Yeah. And you're like, I never want to make that mistake again. Show me exactly what I need to do, because that was 4 minutes of hell because I let that person, take my back or whatever.
Wow. Yeah, it's a great way of looking at it. One thing I just in hearing your just in hearing the way that you were talking about it, one thing I like to encourage people to do is to even like using certain words, like using the word chaos. You've talked about like how you do these things for yourself in the morning and you kind of prep yourself, and then you are trying to figure out a way to deal with the day's chaos. Something that's been helpful to me is just recognize it as it's not chaos, to work on what I would call just like reinterpretation, trying to think this isn't necessarily chaos. This is just a lot of stuff that has to happen for us to get to 300 million and hopefully 400 million this year. It's just part of the project. It's part of the process.
So what's the benefit in redefining it?
Because chaos, I think, kind of denotes maybe a negative. Maybe denotes like a little bit of a negative stress. So maybe kind of thinking of just that there's some work to do. Because my reinterpretation of the word work even is just to consider it an opportunity.
Yeah. Because work is like negative.
It can be a negative, yeah. And even the word hard, it's like I try to make sure that like something's really fucking difficult if I'm going to use the word hard, and try not to. I understand it's just language and it's like the way that we talk, and it's a way to collaborate and a way to have fun and to fuck around kind of. But I also think that it's really important that we work on reinterpretation so that we can kind of continue to get better and continue to have bigger and bigger goals.
I think that's brilliant. One of the, I get asked a lot when I was buying my first rental properties, it was the waiter money. But then after that, it was overtime as a police officer. So I hit a period of time where I was working over 100 hours a week, right? I'd work a 20-hour shift, sleep for 3 hours in my car, show back up, work 18 hours, sleep for 4 hours, right? Like, it was not good for my health, but that was basically how I built up that nest egg to buy these properties. And I'll have people say, how did you do that?
Yeah.
It was redefining what hard was. I would say, look, yeah, that's a long time to stay awake, but really I'm in a vehicle that's doing all the work. I just have to move my foot this far on the gas pedal, it'll move it. It's a temperature controlled environment. A lot of the time I'm actually sitting down writing reports. It's not like I'm chasing people the whole day. Like I would talk myself into, hey, I could be going down into a volcano in China pulling out sulfurous
Somebody
rock.
locked their fucking keys in their car.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Like there's some machine doing the majority of the work that I'm being asked to do. And when I started thinking that way, it doesn't seem hard. Like I'm like, this is 20 hours of a cushy position compared to chopping down a tree all day long or something more difficult. And so the minute you tell yourself it's hard, now if you worked a 10-hour day and you got to work 12, you're a victim. This is not fair. This is ridiculous. I got held for 2 hours. I was supposed to get off, and you're in a bad mood. Whereas if you told yourself, well, it's only 12 hours. I did 20 the last time. It's not that bad. And I think you guys probably naturally had to develop that as bodybuilders, that you're pushing yourself to a brink and you're constantly having to tell yourself that this doesn't hurt. I can handle this. It's like that game that gets played. I think the people who aren't doing hard things don't learn that. And they're talking themselves out of being successful, right? Like my boss wants another report done. Like what you're really asking him to do is move your fingers like this on a keyboard and think a little bit as you're going. It doesn't have to be, the minute you tell yourself it's hard, you start finding excuses to not do it.
Are you working on a new book?
Yeah. So I wrote, my last book to come out was for real estate agents. It was basically this, hey, you're a new agent. No one tells you what to do. It's terrible in our industry having to figure it out as a new person. So this was a book that tells you all the things you got to do as a new person. My next book that should be released in a couple months is going to be, this is how you do it really well. This is how you become a top producer. And then the third book that I'm working on right now is about how you build a team, how you leverage those skills onto other people so that you can either have passive income because your team's doing the work, or you can scale and have several of these things. And then the book I have after that I have a contract to write is going to be, I think it's going to be called Pillars. And the idea is wealth building simplified. You make more money, you save more of the money you made, and you invest the difference. And it's just going to be, here's techniques, mindset, psychology, opportunities to make more money. The stuff like what we talked about, that'll probably be a part of it. Quit telling yourself it's hard. It's not freaking hard, right? And then where are you spending your money? Are you tracking it? Are you budgeting it? Like what you guys just discussed is like caloric intake. How much protein are you eating? You're naturally tracking what you're doing. You start applying that to your money. You start seeing where it goes. It works exactly the same. You get financially fit. Then the last piece would be, hey, now you got a delta, a difference between what you made and what you saved. These are some investing strategies that would work like what we talked earlier.
Any other investments that you are pretty keen on? Do you mess around with cryptocurrency or anything like that?
I haven't so far, but I do see that like this meta thing that's going around right now, I don't know that it's going to be the healthiest thing for human beings, but I think regardless of what I think it's going to happen. So I'm looking at like how it would look to have my loan brokerage that instead of, I could have people all across the country and they all put their goggles on, we meet in a virtual office, and that's how we give them their training. So like buying virtual real estate, accumulating money. Now, what I've noticed is a lot of those metaverses are tied to a specific form of cryptocurrency. There's actually a connection there, which makes it a little bit more complicated. So I'm not sure. I don't just buy crypto to wait and see what's going to happen, but I do think that like that's the future of where work is going to be heading, is where you don't want to commute. So you just put these goggles on in your, den, and then you sit there and you're in this like virtual little office that looks like this where you talk to people. So that's something I invest in. I still invest heavily in real estate, but I just get into different types of real estate. And then I'm starting more companies now. So I started a loan brokerage this year. We've done awesome. That one's going to sell almost $200 million in loans. It's only been around for 7 months. So wow. I think next year that company, we will be taking on a lot more actual loan officers. Will be licensed in other states. That's got some incredible room to run. And then starting to piece together all the little aspects of a real estate transaction that go frustratingly bad. So I want to own an escrow company so I can control the problems that happen. I want to own a construction company so I can make sure that contractors are coming out there that know what they're doing and aren't ripping people off. I want to have a home inspector on my team that can make sure we're doing good work. So that's the last thing I'd say I'm investing.
This is how that shit happens. I know somebody that has a company and they make boxes, and they own two separate companies that make totally different types of boxes, but they also own like tons of property where they have a forest, and they have these. I mean, they own these contracts with people that will chop down the trees and so forth. But I just found it really interesting because the guy owned, one kind of small business where he made boxes. Everybody needs boxes to ship their crap in, but then they made, kind of the smaller boxes. So like when you get like, say like Monster energy drinks and you get them from, like Amazon, if you buy them in bulk, they'll have kind of a small, almost like, a beer style, box around
kind of like
them.
what you get at Starbucks when you carry your drinks out.
Yeah. And it's got the logos on it and stuff, right? Then there's the box that goes on the out. So he just makes all this stuff, and I just found it really fascinating in like communicating with him just how it started. But it started with him being super frustrated because he had to deal with all those other companies all the time, and he's like, these people suck, man. He's like, they're always overcharging, they're always doing this, they're always doing that, that half the stuff isn't even printed properly. So then he ends up figuring out a way to buy that and buy the prints, the things that, or the machines that will print on the boxes and so forth. And I'm just like, holy shit, man. But sometimes that's the way it has to go, right?
You had asked me earlier, like, how'd you get into real estate investing? Almost everything I started, this is the simple truth. I was frustrated with somebody else and was like, I just want to do it myself, so I don't have to worry about it. That's how all these businesses got developed. And so one piece of advice I give people is when you get frustrated with something, it's easy to just say, screw it, I don't want to think about it, because you don't want to experience that frustration, which is really just absolving yourself of solving the problem. I'll just lower my standard because it's too hard to get this problem fixed. If you can keep that standard, man, creative solutions will start to pop up in your mind. And there's someone like you that's kind of built like this empire where people can come to get knowledge about what they're doing. They can come to get supplements. They can get products that will help them to do it better. Was because you said, if someone gets hurt, I'm not just gonna say, oh, well, I can't work out. It's frustrating. I'm just going to drop my standard and not work out. Like, this is a thing that will help you maintain that standard. And now, boom, you've got a product that can solve. If we could get like everyone in America thinking that way, you would start to see a lot of momentum moving in positive directions.
Yeah, another word that I've worked on is the word frustrating. Try to change the word frustrating with being fascinated.
That's good.
So next time you're frustrated, just say like, "Oh, this is fascinating how there's so much traffic here. Look at this. Wow, this is really fascinating."
I like that. That's really good.
Where can people find you?
All right. So on social media, I'm at David Greene 24. There's an E at the end of Greene. My website is davidgreene24.com. And then if you go to biggerpockets.com, you can message me through that website. If anyone has heard what I said and they're just like, this is cool, but I don't know if I want to jump into it, this would be the equivalent of showing up at the jiu-jitsu gym and just checking it out. See if you like what's going on there. Just go to the website, read all the articles, see what resonates with you, see if you like it or not, and then you can figure out how deep into it you want to go.
Is the 24 a Kobe thing or what is it?
I wish I had a cool answer like that.
It's just 24.
That was my basketball number in high school. And there was already David Greene's.
Yeah.
And I just had to pick a number, and now I'm stuck with it at this point.
Fair.
Maybe if you could think of a better reason I could give, like the Kobe thing sounds way better.
That's what I was thinking.
Mamba mentality.
Okay.
Andrew, want to take us on out of here, buddy?
Sure thing. Thank you, everybody, for checking out today's episode. If you dug it, please hit that like button on YouTube. And if you're on iTunes, please drop us a review. Let us know what you guys think down in the comments below as well. Please follow the podcast at Mark Bowles Power Project on Instagram, at MB Power Project on TikTok and Twitter. My Instagram and Twitter is at I am Andrew Z, at the Andrew Z on TikTok. And Nsima, where you at?
Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube, and Nsima Yin Yang on TikTok and Twitter. Mark.
I'm at Mark Smelly Bell. Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch you guys later.